for coming along to today's session. Today's session is all around a compelling growth move and really kind of looking at the potential and risks of selecting your next big opportunity. So before I hand over to Steve, we've just got a few slides to go through, and I'll just go through a little bit of housekeeping. So just to tell you a little bit about the Finance for Growth scheme, it is available to all humble businesses, based businesses that are wanting to access finance and looking at developing their business. As part of the program, there is dedicated one-to-one advice. There are a number of business advisors that are available. So if you do have any questions from today, we'll be happy to kind of pick them up and answer any questions you might have. But equally, there is that dedicated support that's available there. There are also grants available between £1,000 and £5,000 that can be spent on a variety of different things. And as I mentioned before, we've got a webinar and workshop program. Next slide, Steve. So just give it a little bit of housekeeping. We do encourage everyone to join if they can by video, just so it makes it a little bit more interactive. And we do encourage you to comment and part of the session as much as possible. We do ask that microphones are muted just for kind of the presentation part, but there'll be plenty of parts during the session to kind of have a bit more interaction with Steve and ask any questions on comments that you might have. We will be circulating the slides and the recording after the session, so they will be readily available and you can go back to them and refer to them in your own time. And we'll also be sending a sign-in sheet and feedback form after the session. So it's always great to get feedback. We've been doing these a little for 4 or 5 months now, Steve, and but it's always great to have the feedback on how we can improve things going forward. So I think that's it from me, Steve. Yes, I'm going to hand over to you, and I'll just mute for the time being and pick up on the chat. Great,
thank you, James. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for investing the time this afternoon. We've got about an hour and a quarter, something like that, an hour and a half, looking at this topic today. My name's Steve Young, as James has said. I'm a director of a business called Winning Pitch. So key thing to know about Winning Pitch is that we help businesses grow faster, for longer, and more sustainably. But the main thing as well is that we're a fast growth business ourselves. And also I've been part of a team that raised £2.5 million to help grow our business. So I kind of know the issues around what we need to do to grow our business and what you need to do to access funding and to access investment, if that's the way you want to play it. So we've got, today we've got, I thought I'd start off by just nailing one thing really, which is, people invest in people, not businesses. And when I say people, I mean potential investors, potential funders, the people in your team, you yourself. You invest in people. And when we're talking about your growth story, we're really talking about you. We're talking about your ability in terms of what that growth story is, how much you want to grow, and also your ability or perceived ability to execute it. So for me, businesses in themselves, they can't think for themselves. They can't do anything for themselves. So for me, they don't have any potential. They just have opportunity. They have customers, they have products. What people invest in, the potential that people are investing in is you. And your ability to look at different opportunities, rate them in terms of how much potential there is, or how much challenge there is, how much risk there is, and then make that move, picking the best one, the most priority one, making that move and being able to actually deliver on that growth story, on that growth move. So what we know is that potential funders or people in your team, or even yourself, when you think about your next big growth move, what are you thinking about? Well, there's 3 things that I think people look for in a growth move or a growth story, if you like. First thing is clarity. Do you really know your numbers? Have you really thought about it in the right level of granularity? The second thing is confidence. how much confidence are you coming across to me that you can really not only grasp these techniques, not only understand where that growth move should be, but actually nail it? And then that's the same with conviction. Are you really up for it? Are you really up for this growth move? Because it isn't easy. And I know when we raised our money, there were some particularly squeaky bum situations there. But are you really up for this? So whether I'm a member of your management team or a potential investor or maybe even just yourself, what you're thinking about is there enough clarity in this growth story, in this growth move? Is there enough confidence exuding from you and conviction? Do you really want to do it? Are you really driven to do it? So the sort of conversations or sort of questions you need to be, that this will be alluded by, sort of like, so explain, how are you actually going to make that growth move happen? I can see the objective and I see you want to make £1 million from this new sector, but how are you going to make that growth move happen? Because if you can't answer that and you're asking me for money, like funding or investment, or then that tells me that you're not really clarity, confidence, conviction. Or alternatively, you know, if you're putting forward a business plan or an investment idea or something, someone's bound to ask, how did you assess the potential and risks when selecting this big growth move? Again, what we want to be able to do with confidence, clarity, and conviction is explain the process we went to where we got to here, which is the reality of this growth move that you want to make to grow your business. So what does that mean for you and today? Well, what that means for you and today is that we've got 5 things we're going to get for this webinar this afternoon. This is probably a full day's worth of a workshop, if I'm brutally honest. But what we're going to do today is go through it reasonably quickly. So 120 words per minute with gusts up to 360. We're going to go through this. And what I want to do is just show you this process. And some of you in the room today, in the virtual room, I should say, some of you will want the whole process from 1 to 5. Some of you will only want bits of this. You might be fine on certain areas. So you might just want to cherry pick the tools and techniques, or you might want the whole thing. But what I've deliberately done today is make this as simple as possible, as practical as possible. And the reason for doing that is because I want you to make it work. It's no good getting this stuff technically or intellectually. You've got to get it in your gut and you've got to try it and make it work. And that's the way to succeed. So what I'd like you to do, well, at certain points today, we'll be breaking for questions. I want you to ask me the questions. You know, why can't you make this work? What's stopping you from making this work? I want you to give me some comments, some feedback. Is this good? Is it making sense? Or is it not? Bob it in the feedback and we'll keep stopping and catching that up, because that's the key thing that helps me keep on track. So I know I'm really landing some of these points. So 5 practical tools and techniques we're going to do as part of a process to help you make that growth move. Okay, let's make a start. So first one we're going to do is identify new additional related jobs. So that'll be your existing customers. What other jobs, what other products we can sell those. Second area is going to be with regard to looking at what you do at the moment and could you do that for other maybe higher profit niche customers, new markets. The third area is we're going to take these areas and actually be in a position to assess, because what I don't like, you don't like, teams don't like, investors don't like, it is just one idea. Because if that one idea fails, then the whole thing fails. So how do you generate a portfolio of good ideas, good growth moves that you could do? But how do you prioritize them? So that gives us the attractiveness map at number 3. Number 4 is one that we've been asked to do. A lot of people at the moment are still struggling to deliver their business as usual. Lockdown is still an issue in certain areas. And many businesses still have the same customers who have the same problems. It's just they can't deliver their service or their product sometimes in the same way. So we've been asked to look at the online opportunities, particularly if you're a professional services-based business. Look at this, because I honestly believe this is, I think every professional service business in the next few years will have a digital part to it. And that could be your next growth move. And then finally, number 5, we'll use the business model canvas as a way of mapping out and putting some meat on the bone of what that idea, that venture could look like. And that would be enough to get the interest and be able to explain it to somebody in your team, to a potential investor, and maybe even to yourself. So we get it, that level of granularity. So let's kick off. First one. Okay. So what new related jobs could you do for your end customer? So what I'm doing here is trying to get you out of a problem and an issue that a lot of small to medium-sized business owners have, which is they define their business by the product or the sector. And why is that a problem? Well, that's a problem because for me, it stops you thinking about other things you could offer that customer because you're too tightly defined on what you do. Now, it's totally up to you how you define your business. Absolutely it is. But think about how you define it, because that can help or not help looking at a next growth move. So what we talk about is jobs to be done. We define your business, or we help you define your business in terms of the jobs that the customer has asked you to do for him or her. So let me give you an example. Let me give a couple of examples to bring that to life a bit. So a few decades ago, a chap called Theodore Levitt, a management guru, talks about the fact, to exemplify this point, that he said, you know, people don't buy drills, they buy holes. That's what the customer wants. That's the job. And that's true. And at the time, I think a lot of people thought he was a bit crazy, but a lot of people now are going, hey, yeah, I see where he's coming from here. Yeah. So that's the truth. Because if you're a customer of the drill bit and the drill, actually, you're not buying the drill. What you want, the job you need doing is a hole in the wall. And the drill or his drill bit just happens to be the way of doing it. Now, if I ask that company to say, define what business are you in? Because that's a really good place to start any growth strategy. What business are you in? The drill bit manufacturer might say, well, we're a drill bit manufacturer. Okay, well, how else could you define your business? All right, well, we're a design and manufacturer of engineered specialist steel. Okay, but all that has got some quite constraints on it. So what I was asking this particular organization to do was think of themselves as, actually, what you do, you create holes. That's what you do. That's the business you're in. And you could create holes in different sizes, in different ways. But that's where your expertise is in creating holes. And in order to compete in that market, you must do that better and more cheaply than your competitors. Now, if you make holes, what that also allows you to do is think a bit upstream and a bit downstream. So you can think about, well, what does the customer need to do before they make the hole? Or maybe they need to do some measuring, maybe. Okay, so if we're a business that makes holes, maybe we could have a measuring part to our business, rulers or consultants or whatever it might be. Downstream from making the hole, it could be a case of, for the sake of argument, we need to have a way of, let's say, tidying up. So if we've got some sawdust that's on the floor, part of making a hole, if you're in the hole making business, maybe downstream, it's about how we actually tidy up after ourselves. And the same with regard to the hammer, the same with regard to the picture framing business. I mean, picture framing business will probably say, yeah, well, we manufacture wires and frames and fasteners. If you define yourself like that, that's fine, but just be aware that that actually puts a constraint on what else you could do. So if this picture framing business was actually, let's say for the sake of argument, I don't know, a wider remit for them, which would give them more potential to growth, could be, well, maybe you create the perfect working environment for remote workers. When you define yourself like that, then that opens up other things like, or maybe they could offer air conditioning, or maybe they could offer the right sort of seating or pictures in this case. So the businesses for me that will survive and thrive are those that are clear what business they're in. Those that will grow are able to maybe have a bit of a definition that allows them to grow out. But whatever it is, the jobs that they do better and more cheaply. So what does it mean for you? So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to think about your business and try and use it and have a bit of a play with them, this new way of thinking about your business. So how to define the job you do for your customers, not in a product service perspective, but in a jobs to be done way. And the way we do that is simple. We have a verb, we have an object, and we have a context. So if I was to ask, and I do, our customers, what's the job that winning pitch does for you? They'll typically say something like this. The verb would be help, the object would be my business, and the context would be grow to fulfill its potential. The job we do is help businesses grow to fulfill their potential. It isn't a case of we do coaching, we do training, or we do consultancy, because actually, particularly in today's lockdown world, we need to have that scope so we can move and have a bit more flexibility. One of my customers, one of my clients develops an app to help teenagers with anxiety and issues. So when I said to him, you want to grow, how would you define your business? And he said, well, we're an app developer for teenagers, teenage anxiety. But I was saying to him, well, you know, I see you as action verb, supporting teenagers to manage their anxiety better. Because that way, rather than just an app developer, if you really want to support teenagers to manage their anxiety better, then you might want to use text. You might want to use, how about training the parents? How about writing books? How about doing there's all sorts of things you can do, but just be careful how you manage. And it's the same with automotive manufacturers, you know, supply components, provide help to remote workers, which is what we said there. And also, if you think about recently when we had, the defibrillators, when the government was asking for, that they wanted these new bits of kit to help with COVID. It wasn't until they changed, rather than being overly specific about what they wanted, they changed it because there wasn't enough ideas coming through, and started to say, well, instead of the sort of defibrillator thing, the job wanted doing was pump lungs with oxygen when COVID-19 has caused them to fail. So they got all sorts of different things in there, and all sorts of different designs, all sorts of different product solutions that did that job for them. So what I'd like to do now is think about your business. If you asked your customer, what job does my business do for you? What would they say? Using the verb, object, and context. So would they say, you know, we'll help my business grow to fulfill its potential? Or what would they say? Would they start off with a word like support or supply or you provide, or and then the object? What is it you're doing? Helping something? What is that something? Supporting something? What is that something? And then the context of why you're doing that. So just have a quick go at just trying to get into this, I guess, process really of defining yourself and your business by the jobs to be done rather than the product service in this particular market. Obviously, as I say, from how you define your business is completely up to you. But just be aware that if you define it too tightly, it will make it difficult to make growth moves out of there. So let's put a bit more colour on this and give you some examples. So we're working with a company called Data Analytics Limited, and their customer were doctors. And I guess it's fair to say that if you ask a doctor what their main key job is, it would be probably something like, help me deliver care to my patients. That's the job they would want. What we've got, if the doctor is going to do that job, then there's a number of supporting jobs that help them do their core jobs. So these are like second level down. So in order to help me deliver care to my patients, the doctor also needs to help me stay current on research, help me manage my medical records, help me diagnose medical conditions, help me develop a winning team, help me share information across my health professionals. If the doctor is to do a good core job, that is driven by the quality and the effectiveness of those supporting jobs that I've just, a selection of which I put there. Now, the reason why I'm sharing this example with you was because we were working with a company called Data Analytics. And so Data Analytics are very, very good at rapid data analysis. And they have an AI algorithm, don't they always, to solve data problems faster. So they're really good at data, meaty data problems. They're really good at solving the data faster. The third thing they're really good at was actually visualization. So a data visualization using infographics and things like that. So this organization looked at, they were working with the doctor, but the job that they did for the doctors was help me analyze lab result data. That's all they did. So when we asked them, define your business, they said, well, yeah, we help doctors analyze their lab result data. So I said, okay, that's fine. What else could you do for the doctors? They said, well, that's what we do. You know, that's kind of the business, that's how we roll, and we do very well at it. Okay, that's good. So what we worked with them was actually to start map out other jobs to be done that they could do. And I was highlighting to them that actually they were only satisfying a relatively small part of what actually they could do. There was a bigger market out there. And some of these other jobs weren't being done very well by their competitors. Some of these other jobs, if I'm honest, weren't even being done at all by a data analyst. It was the doctor struggling to do them. So what we did in this instance was to work with data analytics, and we said, okay, so let's just look at the data, the doctor here. So if we take one of the doctor's supporting jobs, now we know here that I've put in there, as you can see, that actually from a doctor's point of view, the core job is help me deliver care to my patients. At the moment, data analytics the job they were doing for him was to help me analyzing my complex data. So what we did was took one of these other supporting jobs and we just did we just unpacked it a bit more. Now, we know that they do help me analyze my lab result data, but also as part of those supporting jobs, doctors needed someone to help me diagnose medical conditions, help me assimilate lab data with the patient's history, help me apply data to make the correct diagnosis, help me to simulate data-driven scenarios of patients. And what occurred to me was that maybe data analytics could do a couple of those other jobs as well. They just had never looked under the hood. And then what we actually did then was actually map out some other jobs that the doctors needed doing. So help me stay current on research. The jobs below that were help me access articles and information on journals, help me to share critical lab results with peers, help me to access the hot topics at conferences, help me to develop new data analysis skills. When we looked at those jobs, we started to say, well, hang on, actually some of those are analysis, data. Maybe we could do some of those jobs as well. Obviously, some of those are maybe one step, two step away from what we do at the moment, like help me to develop new data analysis skills. So they were saying, are you seriously saying we could do training? And I said, well, maybe nobody's doing it at the moment, so maybe you could. Third area that we mapped out with them, so their supporting job here we're talking about was help me to share information, to collaborate with staff. 3 lower tier jobs. Help me to define what collaborative data would be useful to share. Help me to establish platforms to encourage data sharing. Help me to present complex data in accessible ways. And again, by this time, the guys were absolutely doing cartwheels, saying, well, there's quite a few things that say data analysis there as well. And that's another part that we haven't looked at. So what we did, we actually started to look and actually prioritize these. So we said, well, maybe there's something called adjacent jobs. So these are jobs that are maybe just one step away from what you're doing already. They won't take a lot more resource. It won't be very risky, but we do need to make that growth move. But it is possible, certainly. And we put them in yellow. And we just picked off the ones that were the easiest, quickest, least risky areas that we could move into. And with the areas in grey, what we did then, we said, well, some of these jobs are related still, but they're probably 2, 3, 4 steps away from what we're doing at the moment. And frankly, they'll be more risky, they'll involve more investment, and they'll take longer. What we're after is the ones that we can get to right now. So what we were able to do there is actually start to look at, rather than defining the business as, oh, well, what we do is we analyse lab result data for doctors, we started to define their business by, actually, we help doctors analyse and data. And what we can do there is actually expand it out. So that worked really well for data analytics. And it gave them lots of, I guess, just lots more options in terms of where they were going to grow their business. What we can also do, if we want to get very innovative about it, and we do because we want to beat our competitors, this is a trick that that your competitors will never have seen before. Because what we tried in Winning Pitch was we took the jobs to be done theory, and then what we did was we created it into an ideas box. We played with different variations. So let me show you what I mean by that. So I've already said how you define your job to be done. So I've already said verb, object, context. So for Winning Pitch, verb was help, object, my business, context, grow to fulfill its potential. So our customers would say, you help grow my business to fulfill its potential. The next level down for Winning Pitch underneath that could be things like supporting jobs. For that one could be reforecast my cash flow during the coronavirus crisis. You see, I'm still using the same pattern, verb, object, context. Fund my technology to win higher profit customers. Sell my capacity to quickly generate a revenue stream. Train my staff. And diversify my operations whilst we can't do face-to-face business. So there's our high-level job to be done. There's our secondary ones. And when it gets, if you want to be, as I say, if you want to get really innovative and create new options and new fresh thinking with your customer, you can play about with this like we did. So we said, well, let's just take maybe leverage from that column and technology from that column and generate a revenue stream from that column and join them together. So would our customers want leverage my technology to quickly generate a new revenue stream? Yeah, possibly, yeah. And maybe going the other way around to win high profit customers. My spare capacity so we could go diversify from that one. We could pick my spare capacity, and then we could do higher profit customers. Diversify my spare capacity to win higher profit customers. Some of our customers might be interested in that job. We could do the same with fund my staff during coronavirus crisis. All sorts of ways. This is a very powerful tool to mix and match once you get familiar with the technique. But the first place to go is start to define your business by the job you do for your customer, and then think about top jobs, think about supporting jobs, and look at that as growth options. So what are the tasks? What's the takeaway from module number 1 on this idea? So the first thing I would say, the 3 tasks you want to do, first of all, is map jobs. So from my point of view, it's a case of really looking at how we map our jobs. So mapping out your end user customer core jobs plus supporting jobs. So get closer to your customers. At the moment, many of us aren't probably making enough contact with particularly our important customers. This is a great opportunity to have a chat with them. How's it going? And start to map out what jobs, ask them what jobs you do, and then map out some other opportunities, other supporting jobs. Interview your clients. How important is this job that you do? Measures of success. So for example, if, I don't know, let's say we went to the drilling a hole in a wall, what are the measures of success for drilling a hole in the wall for that job? Well, it could be, did you drill a straight hole? Did you lose the drill as it went scoring down the wall? Did it make a mess? How quickly did it take? Did it make a lot of noise? Did you hit an electric wire and electrocute yourself? Whatever it might be, measures of success. And dissatisfaction levels. So for someone like me who's got the handicap of a marketing degree, I hate drilling holes in a wall because I'm worried about hitting a wire. I'm not very practical. So actually I'm quite dissatisfied with the drilling the hole in the wall with a drill bit option. Much prefer to have a really powerful bit of blue tack for that picture frame, or even some glue. I don't know, but it's not, for me, in my market segment, it's not a great way of putting a picture up. And to what extent is that market underserved or overserved? So are there a lot of people in our drilling marketplace or not? And this is a way we can do it to generate new features to improve what you're doing already, but also maybe identify new products that could disrupt or even complement. Like I say, you know, could we have if we have a drill, do we have something that catches the dust that comes from the drilling? What about an automatic measuring point on the drill? I don't know, lots of things. But we've got to do that to unlock these new ideas, and we do that through looking at the job, not defining ourselves in the other way. So what I'd like to do is, in the same way there that we were looking at that, I'd like to start, maybe let's just have a quick practice. We've got a bit of time. We want to make it interactive. So what I'd like to do is maybe just have a think about, how do we say, like, yeah, let's go for this one here. So I'll give you the example of our organization. What I'd like to do is define your business. What's the main job you do for your customers, using the verb, object, context? So let's just define that high-level job. Write it down on a scrap of paper now, or a pad of paper you got in front of you. What's your verb? What's your object? What's your context? Are you helping people to do something? Are you reforecasting? Are you leveraging? Are you supporting them? Are you training them? What are you doing? And what's the object? Is it the business? Is it a person? Is it something else? What's the object? And then finally, why? What are you doing that for? What's the context? And then what I'd like to do is maybe just think about maybe some of the secondary jobs that sit below that high level one. So in our case, in order to help businesses grow, we could reforecast the cash flows, we could leverage market. These are the other secondary jobs that mean we do the top job well. What are your secondary jobs? Have a think. Hopefully by now you'll have got your high level job you do for your customers. What about the lower level ones? The ones that really are the next level down. See if we can get some of those in. And obviously the businesses that succeed, the businesses that grow, they just get these jobs done better and or more cheaply than their competitors. That's the bottom line. So hopefully we've had a bit of time to maybe get some of secondary jobs in there as well as our main job. And that might be opening up some new thoughts about how we can go about it. If you're struggling at this stage, then my challenge back to you would be, how well do you really know your customers? Because if you don't know these jobs that they're doing, then I would suggest or challenge you to say, you need to find out. I mean, it's basic, but its bottom line is that the businesses that grow and succeed know their customers better than those businesses that don't grow and succeed. They're closer to their customers. They understand them and they give them products and services that delight them. So if you're struggling with the jobs to be done, the question I would challenge you guys with is, if you're struggling at that stage, then you really do need to map out the jobs for your customers, interview them, start to generate some ideas with them. Okay. So anybody got any questions at this stage? Any comments, any thoughts, any issues? James, have we got any questions or comments?
Nothing's coming on the chat, but if anyone wants to unmute and just ask away at this moment in time, I've got no qualms with that.
Okay. So let's crack on then. So what I wanted to do was just get you into the habit and the way of thinking about jobs to be done, but also the way of defining the concept of job mapping. This is a good way of doing it. So this is for your existing customers. We're looking for new jobs that we maybe never uncovered before, but new jobs we can do for our customers to grow. The other way to look at this is what other new customers also require that job doing for them. So let's keep this really simple. What I'm looking for here are market opportunities. And I'm looking for market opportunities doing the same thing you're doing at the moment, the same job you're doing, but for a different customer set. So again, here's a very, very simple template to do. any market opportunity, if we're going to keep it simple, is defined by two things. One is, what's the job that you want to do, the job to be done? And the second thing is, I've called it a job executor there, but I could just call it a customer. So if we go back to data analytics, what's the job to be done is help me analyze lab result data plus a customer, the doctors, equals a market opportunity. So what new other market opportunities could we do with the same job to be done? So what I'm going to do here is just replicate the job to be done. I'm just going to write that in. It's the same job we're doing for all of them. But I'm going to think about what other organizations, markets, industries need someone, in the same way that doctors do, help me analyze lab result data. What industries where lab result data is really important, where it's a real pain to get it right, where they need it quickly, where they need it accurately, and where they need it presented in a really clear way, because it's important data. So obviously doctors. Who else? What other markets? Well, maybe dentists. But then what I would say is we need to look at niches here. We're not going to, if we're a business like data analytics, we're not going to enter a whole new industry like dentists. What we want to do is pick off some of the niche markets, probably where there's fewer players and probably where the profits are higher. So it might go like orthodontists or endodontists. Who else uses data? Fire service. So, but again, we're not going to go into full fire service. I want a niche. So let's say fire investigation teams. The police, yeah. But again, not going to make that generic woolly move. We're going to go for a niche, maybe crime scene investigators or the ballistics team. And finally, crash investigation. So air traffic accidents, they use it more than others. So see what I've done there is basically looked at the general thought of who else has this job to be done, and then niched within that to those niche markets, those smaller but more probably higher profit markets, whereby they have a bigger need for it. It's more painful need for it. They need to get done. And there's a bigger risk thing around, a jeopardy around if they don't get it done right, there's a real problem. So what we can do there is basically maybe do another quick and dirty sort of view of those. How many are they? How often do they buy? Is there a real pain there, etc.? And we might pick two, let's say for the sake of argument, orthodontists and the crime scene investigators. And we can start to do a little bit more digging on those two. So we're not wasting our time doing a whole industry search on police and fire service. We're going very specific around the, however many there is, 2,000 crime scene investigators there are in the UK. I suppose at this stage also, it's worth talking about, we mentioned existing customers, adjacent customers and related customers. And you'll remember the definition I gave you was, obviously existing customer is someone we're doing the job for at the moment. The adjacent customer is one step away. So not a lot of risk, not a lot of time needed, not a lot of money needed. They're nearly what we're doing. The same with related, but they're probably a bit further down the line. They're probably 3 or 4 steps away. And we can apply that logic also to jobs. So our existing job is the one we're doing, the job we're doing already. Adjacent job is maybe 1 or 2, maybe steps away. It's a little bit more effort, risk, but the related ones are even further away. And the reason why I'm taking you through this is if we give the example before, like we know that our existing customer with data analytics was doctors, and let's say our adjacent customer was orthodontist, and let's say our related customer was crime scene investigation. So orthodontist, 1 step away, 2 steps away, related customer, maybe 3 or 4 steps away. What we can do is we can write in the existing job to be done. So our existing job is help me analyze lab result data. We do that for the doctors who are existing customers. We could do it for an adjacent customer, like an orthodontist, same job. And we could do it for related customer, crime scene, but that would be a few steps away, a bit more difficult. We could then look at adjacent jobs. So we could look at help me assimilate lab data with their history, which is an adjacent job for doctors, but it's also an adjacent job for orthodontists, our adjacent customer, and our crime scene investigators related customer. And finally, related jobs. So these are related jobs that are maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 steps away. And we can do that for our existing customer, our adjacent customer, and our related customer. the reason why I'm slightly stressing this point is as you move down and right, away from existing toward related and related, then the risks get more. And that's not a reason for not doing it, but you need to be aware of it, and you need to, I guess, put contingencies in there. So do you need a bigger, different team to do that bottom right one? Do you need more funding? Do you need a different partner to work with? Whatever it might be, but just be aware that as you get down towards that bottom right, it gets more and more risky. So we talked a little bit there about customers, but we started off by jobs to be done with our existing customers, what new jobs we could do for them. The second thing we talked about was looking at the same job, but maybe with some different customers. We talked about doing some ways of actually identifying how we could find niches. They're often smaller, easier to enter markets, sometimes more profitable, less competition. So the third thing we're going to talk about now is about evaluation of which job customer growth opportunity you should focus upon. So what we do here is, from my point of view anyway, when we're looking at these, what we want to try and do is generate a number of options. Because from your point of view, from your team's point of view, from a potential funder's point of view, people see, if you only got one idea, then if that doesn't work, it's a bit of a high risk strategy, isn't it? So what we want to try and do is develop, I guess, a portfolio of ideas. And the way we do that is we generate the ideas, but then we map them onto something called the attractiveness map, because that allows us to prioritize them. It allows us to assess them, and it allows us to demonstrate with confidence, clarity, and commitment that we've really made a considered choice here and we've gone through a process. So if I take the left-hand side where it says overall potential, and you can see that that has a rating of low, mid, high, super high. So we're going to judge these ideas based on potential and challenge. So if I take the overall potential one on the left-hand side on the vertical, what we're talking about here is trying to make some sort of an assessment. And obviously if we've got market data and real knowledge, then that helps. But how big is this opportunity? And a question that a potential investor might ask, or you might want to ask yourself, is actually, is it at all worth pursuing? If the air crash opportunity for data analytics is too small, not very profitable, frankly, it's not worth spending much time on it. So when we're looking at potential, what we're looking at there is almost like I see these ideas a bit like a mountain range. So imagine that the set of possible opportunities in which your venture should sort of travel is sort of each opportunity is a bit like a mountain. So the overall potential is how big is that mountain? When we're thinking about it, is the height of the mountain, the height of the potential. And that could be low, medium, high. Then to evaluate it, what we're going to look at is overall challenge. So we're going to rate this idea not only in terms of the potential, but also in terms of the challenge. Because there's no point in going for an opportunity if there's just too many problems in executing on this idea. So overall challenge for me is, what are the obstacles that lie ahead of us if we decided to pursue this option? What are the main risks? How difficult will it be to overcome them and conquer this opportunity? So I guess if we go back to our mountain range analogy, if the mountain range, if overall potential is the height of those mountains, the height of the mountain, the size of your idea potential, then challenge is we want to run up that highest mountain as quickly as possible. But what are the barriers that are in our way that are stopping us from running up there? So I guess it refers to the dimension in terms of the chances of you conquering the top of the mountain rather than just its height. You see what I mean? So we have some of these ideas, some of these growth ideas, and what we'll do is look at them in terms of potential and challenge. So if we looked at maybe some when we map them out and assess them, some of those will be relatively low challenge, pretty easy to do, but also relatively low potential. So from that point of view, we call these quick wins. So although they offer limited value creation, these are relatively safe options. They may offer actually a quick win opportunity in the short term, maybe as a stepping stone to moving forward. So these are your quick wins, relatively low challenge, relatively low potential. Top left, gold mine. So these are the dream come true, but relatively rare opportunities. But usually these are as a result of actually doing the good research that's, I guess, identified some unmet need that your customer has. Or maybe you possess a particular unique know-how that means it would be a big challenge to do this for other people, but because you've got some unique expertise, knowledge, it's actually not a big challenge for you. So you are on the left-hand side of that horizontal and on the top of the potential. Bottom right, questionable, relatively low potential and relatively low challenge. So I suppose this is, you won't be surprised, this is the, I guess, the least desirable quadrant. Many ventures fail because they are in this space. I guess what typically is in this space are the sort of technology startups. So this is someone who is working, because it's high challenge, this is someone who's working particularly hard, long hours to overcome particular technical challenges, producing a wonderful bit of kit. But unfortunately, they've failed to ask whether there's a market for it. So the potential is low. So they've worked really hard to create something that has relatively low value or lack of market demand. Questionable. So top right is a phrase you might have come across with some funders and some investors, moonshots. So these are, I guess, high in terms of their challenge and high in terms of their overall potential. So I guess some may argue, some investors may argue that actually these are the most interesting opportunities because we know that the potential is there. If and only if we could overcome the challenge, this would be the best opportunity, obviously. But we've got some issues maybe. So here what we need to be thinking about, what makes it a challenge? But in some ways, some people, some strategists, small business strategists or investors look down left to the quick wins and say, well, maybe if we could get some quick wins, put some money in the till, that could help partly fund the moonshots on the top right-hand side. So I said what I'd try and do today is unpack this and fairly quickly go through this process. But what I wanted to do was just give you a bit of a, I guess you might be sat there thinking, well, that's all very well, Steve, but how do I know how to assess my potential of my idea, my job to be done for this market? Or how do I assess challenge? Because they're quite woolly words in some ways. Which is why today I'm opening up, we could spend a day on this sort of stuff, but I thought I'd just give you it, and you'll get this in the slides, and obviously you've got the recording to go back to, but this is a way of evaluating those markets to assess their attractiveness. So how do we decide on how much potential there is? Well, we could look at potential in terms of compelling reasons to buy. So this is our crime scene investigator. Crime scene investigator, scene of crime evidence. So let's just say they were saying, well, I'm going to rate its potential. So is there a really compelling reason to buy crime scene investigators? Do they really want this data analysis? Well, unmet need, better than current solutions, mid. What about market volume? What's the size? Are there lots of crime scene investigators or scene of crime people out there? Do they buy it a lot? What sort of growth is there in this market? Mid again, okay. Economic viability, what are the margins like? Are the customers sticky? Will they keep returning to us? Maybe high. So what we'll do is we'll average those and say, let's say mid. So overall potential for this opportunity is mid. On the challenge, so what are the challenges? So again, just fairly quickly thinking about, well, what are the obstacles to implementation? So here they might say, well, actually, there's quite a lot of obstacles. What about time to revenue, development time, sales cycle time? Well, that's super high. Okay. What about the risks in terms of competitive threats or third-party dependencies? Well, that's high. Okay. So we could average those out and maybe we come out super high there. So we take the potential score at the bottom and the overall challenge score on the right-hand side, and we just put it on the grid. So scene of crime would go somewhere around there. So we can see straight away that this opportunity is a questionable opportunity, we might say. What about the other opportunities or ideas? Well, turns out that the fire service was a bit of a moonshot, really. It had both a lot of potential, but also quite a lot of challenge to get into that new market. The dentist, that was more interesting. There was less barriers to entry. We were quite specific about that. So actually the challenge was lower, and there's a reasonably high amount of potential in there. Air crash investigators, turns out we reasonably difficult to get into, but also the potential is quite low. So what we were able to do with data analysis is actually present almost like a portfolio of ideas to their team, such that they and maybe potential investors or other people could look at how they got to this stage, what ideas they had in their portfolio, and why they've chosen the ones they've chosen, the strategy behind it. So that's kind of a really powerful tool to map out those ideas, jobs to be done. So I'll stop. Has anybody got any questions at this stage in regard to this, using this as an assessment? Does it make sense? Does it look useful? Could you use it? Challenge, potential? If we gave you the slides, could you look at this? So James, is there any questions or comments on this assessment technique?
None have come in, but I guess I'll ask a question. I guess from a kind of a winning pitch perspective, just looking at the kind of 4 quadrants, is there kind of, I know obviously we'd love all of them to be moonshots, but are you seeing kind of any trends that that would fall into the gold mine, the quick wins, the questionable areas?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, you say you'd like them all to be moonshots, but obviously moonshots are also, they have high potential, but they also have super high challenge. So yeah, I don't want them all in the moonshot, to be honest. What I think we need to do is to structure that portfolio. So you have some in each area, so you can work on them and develop them. But I think one of the areas that we're seeing in terms of, and we'll mention this in a second, is certainly in professional services, a lot of people moving onto a more digital model, a more online offering. And they're finding that actually the potential is quite high there. So it's sort of like on the left-hand side of that grid. And the challenges aren't as big as they may first thought. So a growth move into an online opportunity is one that a lot of, particularly in the professional services-based or services-based businesses, are looking at. And most of them are not thinking just for the next few months until we get back to normal. I think everybody's realizing now that things aren't going to get back to what was normal. It's all changed. And actually, if you don't have an online part to your service delivery, then you're going to really miss out going forward.
Thanks, Steve. Is there anyone else that wants to make a comment or ask any questions before we crack on?
Okay. Crack on then. Okay, so where are we at? Let's just take a bit of I said we were going to go for it. So first tool was all about looking at new jobs for your existing customers and how you define that, jobs to be done. What other new jobs through job mapping could we find to do with our customers? Second area, we looked at new customers. So what other new customers could we do the same job we're doing already for, but other niches? And then what I said was throw all that together and let's look at that and assess that through an attractiveness map, where we look at them and assess them in terms of potential and in terms of challenge. And that way we get moonshots, gold mines, quick wins, etc. One of the requests we had as we moved into lockdown was that people were talking about growth moves and jobs to be done, and asking for more support on that delivery side. So what we found was a lot of businesses, whether it was those in hospitality or those in retail or those in travel, they still had their problem, and the customers, the customers they were serving still had the same problems, the same jobs to be done. It's just the route to market or the delivery part was now no longer feasible. So they had to get an online route to market in place. And a lot of people were asking, well, how does that fit in with your jobs to be done theory, Steve? And how can I look at that? So what we created was a jobs to be done canvas, if you like, jobs that could be delivered online. So what you see in front of you is, I guess, a very high level view of all the sorts of jobs you could do for your customer. So I say that, and with the caveat of to a greater or lesser extent, but maybe some of that's just in our mind in terms of what we do. So if you take number one, there is to a greater or lesser extent a job to be done with your customers that's to do with defining something, planning, budgeting, trialing something that might be able to be done online. Likewise, locating. There might be something to do with your job that you do for your customer up front, what we call upstream, that's about locating something, gathering something, accessing something, diagnosing something that you could do online, a job online, before you do what you do. So a lot of businesses now are using online diagnostics or online assessments to understand where the priorities are for the customer. And some customers are paying for that. Third area is preparing something, setting something up, organizing something, training people. A number of online training divisions or teams or offerings that I've seen spin out over the last couple of months, amazing. But again, online training, people will pay for that if it makes them do your job better. Fourth is confirming. So this might be about validating or prioritizing or helping them decide something online that they would pay for. It's a job they need to do. And then if we say execute is them doing the job that you doing your job. So that is maybe performing whatever it is you do, or transacting or administrating with you, doing that online. Sixth area is monitoring. So whenever a job is being done, and again, to a greater or lesser extent, there's some degree of monitoring, or even number 7, modifying what is being done. That might be a job that your customer needs doing online because he can't or she can't talk to you directly. And then finally, concluding online. So how do we tie this up online afterwards? So at the end of this webinar, we'll talk about electronic forms. You're being sent one. That's a good example of something we were doing online, because you can't do it physically now. So, but it's a job that needs to be done. So what I'm looking at here is a way of getting you to think. If you imagine at the moment you're in box number 5, executing whatever it is you do, what I'm suggesting you think about and challenge you to think about is, what are the upstream things that need to be done? Confirming, preparing, locating, defining. And what are the downstream jobs your customer still needs to do? And you may be perfectly fitted to do that for them. So I'm talking about monitoring, modifying things, concluding things, signing off things. So let me put a bit of color on this with an example. So we did this with a consultancy, an IT consultancy that helped manufacturing companies with productivity. So the end user, going back to definition of job, the job definition. So it was for the production manager, and the job to be done was improve productivity of my production line. That's the job that the production manager needed this organization to do for him. So what we did there, and I'm not for 1 minute, and I said this to the business, I'm not saying they do all these ideas, just pick 1 or 2, just cherry pick 1 or 2. But we had a session with them, it's fantastic, where we said, okay, so what could we do online in the definition side of things? So could we do a health check or a diagnostic before we start online? Could we do some industry surveys or an ROI, a return investment forecasting tool for them? You know, maybe that could form a package of an online package. What about locating other potential partners or downloads of process maps? What does success look like? A mapping tool maybe in the locate area. Preparing? Well, what could we do that maybe we could do some sort of a YouTube videos, how to increase your chances of success, or an online training package with full accreditation. So we go full training offering here before we do what we do online. Confirming, well, maybe 5 things you must have in place before you do whatever you want to do. Online, ask me anything sessions. These are all sort of part of the jobs that your customer wants to do, and then execution, your bit. But even when you've done that bit that you do, is there opportunity to do some online selling of related products or services? What about live streaming support in terms of whatever it is they're doing? Could you offer that for a premium price? Or monitoring, or modifying, or even concluding, you know, storing, reporting? What could you do online to help them? So the reason why we use this tool is to open people's minds to what, first of all, that there is probably some job they could or should be doing online for their business customer. It could be upstream in terms of confirming, preparing, locating, or defining something, or it could be downstream, modifying, monitoring, concluding. Or it could be just doing what you're doing online, but just with maybe more live streaming, or maybe something else with regard to related products or services. So it's a really good, powerful way of getting you to think. And as I say, you know, the challenge to this organization was pick 1 or 2 of those. Don't pick all of them, because you just get indigestion from picking too many initiatives. So I suppose, again, just opportunity to take a bit of a quick break in terms of questions, answers, thoughts. Could this work for you? What's stopping you from doing an online jobs to be done type offering to your customers? Have you tried it? Maybe would they pay for it? I think the key thing here also, perhaps the bigger question in some ways, is when we get back to something that looks a little more like normal, is would your business benefit from having an online part to it that might give you the edge? So, James, any comments or thoughts or any questions in?
No, nothing's come in. I guess when's, you know, timing's obviously, and timing and accessibility is quite maybe not accessibility, but I guess timing in this day and age is pretty difficult to be able to do these types of activities.
Yeah.
I know what you'll say in the fact that we've got to make time, but you know, if business owners are struggling with you know, finding time to work on the business, what kind of advice would you give to them?
So I think this is a really good example of this sort of job is for high growth leaders. And high growth leaders know they need to spend more time working on the business rather than working in the business. So if you're, and I think sometimes the biggest constraint in a lot of businesses I know is actually the person at the top, because they have to do everything. They haven't learned the skill of delegation. And what they don't know is that they're the biggest constraint in the business. So what I would say to those people who haven't got the time, who want to be a high growth leader, is start to delegate more, start to use other people, outsource, delegate. But this is your job. Your job is to drive the company forward, to get it growing, to see the bigger picture. Your job isn't, you know, to be, a lot of the time, a lot of people who think they're leaders, for me, are just administering the business. They're not leading it anywhere. They're just busy fighting fires. So delegation, leadership, and this is your job. And not necessarily online. I wouldn't necessarily say you've got to do something online, but you've got to grow your business. You've got to take it somewhere, and that's firmly on your job description.
Thanks, Steve.
So last section for us is where we get to now is people saying, well, that's great. I've got some really good ideas in terms of new jobs to be done for customers, or I might have some new customers, some niche market areas that I've assessed in my little grid. And how do I take it forward next? How do I put meat on the bone of this idea? What's the next stage? And this is kind of a good, brilliant way of formulating and putting a bit more, as I say, meat on the bone, some colour on it, that might be necessary perhaps for a business plan that you've got, or perhaps you're selling the idea, the strategy to people in your team, or maybe selling it to yourself. Or alternatively, if you're going for investment, this is the sort of thing you might include in one of your pitch decks or something like that. So this is an opportunity that we think we're going to go for, and you want to explain it a little bit more as to the who's, whys, and wherefores. And what we use for that is the business model canvas. Now I know perhaps a number of you might be familiar with it already, the business model canvas, but it's a very powerful tool. For those of you who are not aware of it, I would suggest, maybe speak to your account managers or people like that and get a session mapping it out, because what it allows you to do as the leader or as the business owner is to think of your business in terms of what it does, how it does it, how it adds value in a very simple way. It defines your business model, but it defines it in 9 boxes on 1 page. And that means it's in a nice bite-sized chunk that you can look at and play with and challenge and move around. So I thought, again, through use of worked examples, this is an organization we did some work with. I'll call them the Rossili Bay Gin Company. And this is their pre-COVID gin business model. And I'll go through this, and within 2 minutes, you'll have a very good idea of how this business works and why it does what it does. And that's the power of the tool, rather than my explanation, probably. So we have 9 boxes to describe this business. So we'll start on the right-hand side with customers. So who are the customers? So these are premium quality shops, bars and hotels. And the end user are what they call the gin curious. So the 19% of consumers who don't buy on price. They're the gin curious as they define them. The value proposition, which is what value we offer, but what problems we solve for that particular customer. A range of small batch artisan gins. And you can tell there's been a marketing person here, because they've described it as provides a unique drink experience, tasting slowly distilled gin to unlock the tantalizing tastes and feelings of the Pembrokeshire beach. Crikey. So that's their value proposition that they offer those customers. Channels as third one is how do we get that route to market? So that's the network of distributors, and they sell it through a factory shop. So that's how we get that value proposition to those customers, through the channel of a network of shops, network of distributors, a factory shop. Interestingly, on customer relationships, we've asked them how you would define the relationship you have with your customers. So bearing in mind their value proposition, this isn't just a customer buyer sort of relationship. This is an experiential relationship they have with them. So you can see that those are the customers, that's the value proposition, the channel is the route to market, and the experiential is how they describe their relationship. So that's on the sort of, I guess, the sort of on stage side. If we go to the left-hand side of the business model canvas, we look at things like key activities, resources, and partners. So what are the key activities? So this is basically key activities is what does your business do? So this organization does procurement, it does distilling, infusing, condensing, bottling, marketing. These are the key activities it does as a business. Key resources are the unique selling points, if you like, how they create a moat around their business to keep the competitors away. So what are the key resources? So for them, this was their master distillery, their regulatory experts, the secret recipe, the equipment. These are all the things that are key resources that people entering the market would struggle. Key partners are external agencies or organizations that help us achieve these things. For many of us, small businesses like us, like you, like me, actually, if we want to grow fast, more often than not, we might need actually some key partners. So this might be a funder, it could be investment. In this case, it was a case of there's a marketing agency, there's their suppliers, obviously, and they're also doing work with the Wine and Spirits Trade Association. Last two boxes, costs and revenues. So here I'm after, in the bottom left, I'm looking for the top 3 areas of cost: production materials, sales and marketing, staff and premises, and revenue. How do we put money in the till? So this organisation, sales of gin and factory tours. So there it is, 9 boxes on 1 page. We've got a definition of what Rosselli Bay Gin do, and you've got that, a really good level of knowledge. So this is their business as it is at the moment. So let's imagine that COVID strikes, and let's imagine that from their point of view, they're looking for some new growth moves. So they were looking at the jobs to be done. So they went to their customers and mapped them out. And one of the jobs that they still needed, they still wanted to buy gin. They still liked gin. It was still these customers. It's just the channel to market wasn't there anymore. And also the customers had jobs to be done. Like the customer's job to be done was, I've got to buy the gin, was one of their jobs. So we looked at this and said, well, in the current circumstances of COVID, what about if we did that job for those customers? So they didn't have to buy the gin. Actually, we'll send it to them in a box every month, online membership club. And not only will we send them some gin, but we'll make them, because they've got other jobs that need to be done. We'll also give them some sort of botanicals and maybe some nibbles as well every month. And maybe that might be a new growth move for us. So what we did then was look at that in terms of the online membership model, in terms of the business model canvas. And we looked at what had changed or what needed to change, just so we could rate it in terms of, not in terms of overall potential, but also the challenge as well. What are the risks? So you need to map that business model out in order to do that. So it's a different value proposition. 1 bottle a month delivered exclusively to you, 20 minutes. We're also going to do Zoom group tastings, and we're going to create a gin connoisseur virtual learning environment. In terms of the customers, well, also we're looking at some new gin customers from adjacent markets, and I'll come onto that in a second, as well as their existing gin curious. Channels was going to be online shop and home delivery, and instead of the experiential relationship, they want a community feel to it. Their activities shifted to more digital content, online training, fulfillment. And the key resource was a thriving online community of gin connoisseurs. That was the resource they were building. And by the way, if you had a thriving online community of your customers for when you go back to the new normal, how much of an advantage would that be for you? Certainly a lot of your competitors would be very envious of it. And in some cases, I've seen businesses that sell, and actually it's the thriving online community that's got the most value in it, rather than the business itself. Key partners here: web development, Royal Mail. They had a branded close affiliate partner who also was going for the high market. So they did some joint events together. They sold watches, and Rosselli sold gin club to them. Bit more cost in terms of web development and content, and the revenue streams were different. So this was £29 a month, £348 a year, online selling, adjacent products, experiences, etc. So this is how they mapped that out. Then the government came along and said, oh, we need some help here. There's an opportunity here for hand sanitizer. And one of the jobs to be done with hand sanitizers is distilling alcohol. And they had the equipment to do that. So you can see here what they went through there was, this one's hand sanitizer gel. So the value proposition was about, alcohol-based products that fight infection, keep my hands clean. The segments were NHS, key workers. The customer relationship here was actually more transactional, but it was more about community. The activities needed similar things, but also a little bit more mixing and blending. And they needed more packaging and labeling approvals for the hand sanitizer. The suppliers were different: aloe vera, tea tree, plastic pump, etc. They were different. And the channels to market in this case was voluntary delivery van drivers. Costs, well, pretty much the same, really, pretty much the same, but revenue was different. So this venture was a not-for-profit venture they were looking for funding for. So different in many ways, but not so different in terms of the jobs to be done. Different market, different customers, but still some similar jobs to be done, and a way of looking at it from that point of view. So I suppose that brings us to the end of the webinar, really, the 5 areas, the 5 things we said we'd get through. So the first area we said about looking at what new additional related jobs you could do for your end customer. And I said there, you know, what you need to do is think about how you define your business, but also start talking to your customers and mapping out those jobs. There may be some real nuggets there that you've just never seen because you've never asked. Second area we talked about was looking the job you do at the moment. You're obviously really good at what you do at the moment, that job you're doing. So why don't you look at some adjacent other customers, niche, higher profit customers that you could do that job for in addition to the one you're doing at the moment. And then generate those ideas and assess them using attractiveness map number 3. And we look at them in terms of potential. How big is the opportunity, but also challenge. What are the obstacles? We map them out and try and get a good portfolio that can work. Fourth area there was, is there opportunity to shift online delivery? What could we do online? What jobs need to be done online? And actually, maybe we could get the customer to pay for those. Maybe it could be a separate part of the business. Maybe you can make that move before your customers do, before your competitors do. But how could shifting online get your customers' jobs done better, maybe? And then the 5th area was the business model canvas. This was a way of defining, just putting more meat on the bone of what that venture, that new idea might look like, such that we had it in a business plan, maybe that we were going to go to some funders with or some investors with, or as a way of actually for you just to get your head around what are the sort of things, how it would impact your business and what would have to change and what would stay the same. And a good way of selling that to your team and get them buzzed up for it as well. So hopefully, as I say, we've got it a really a good run at it today. More than happy to take some questions now. But what I would say is that, as I said earlier, you know, it's great coming to webinars like this and intellectually grasping these very practical tools and techniques, but you know, it doesn't mean anything unless you actually do something with it. So pick one of the tools or pick the process, talk to your, I guess, account managers and see if there's a way of actually utilizing this and getting it done, because that's where the difference between the winners and the losers in life are. Okay, James, over to you. Any questions or comments that have come through with regard to the tools or why it might not work for them, or any challenges?
Nothing in the chat, but I guess we can open the floor up now to
yeah, absolutely.
Questions. I guess just to kind of get the questions flowing, I just had a couple myself, and I just wanted to kind of, obviously there's a lot of information to take in, and just kind of home in on one of those kind of key areas. But I guess, you know, if you're a business owner right now and you're looking at this and what's, you know, and you've been on the session for the last hour, I guess, what's the one kind of big takeaway that you would say for this from today's session?
I think for me, I talk to a lot of business owners, a lot of business leaders at the moment, and there's a lot of fear out there at the moment. There's a lot of worry, and there's a lot of people who are really sort of scared into submission almost. What I would say is that, you know, we can't do anything about the COVID-19 situation, but we can decide how we react to it. And you can either choose a mindset of fear and a mindset of submission and worry, or you can do something about it. And what I would say, and where I see the winners in business at the moment, those are the ones that are doing something about it. And you know, what I've tried to do today is put forward some very practical things that you could do. And even if you just did one of these things and got it done, I'm sure it would make a massive difference, not only to the strategy, but also to your own mindset. Because we know that, you know, doing action, getting stuff done helps with the anxiety as well as it actually gets progress as well.
Thanks, Steve. Okay, well, we'll open the floor completely to everyone. Does anyone have any questions for Steve? at this moment in time.
We're still trying to distill all that information we just
I know. It must be the Rosselli gin.
Yeah, I think for me, it's just a lot of information to take in. It's all very powerful and very valuable, and it's just digesting it, really taking it away and seeing which is the main area of focus to start off with, and then put it into action. Like you say, plan which bits are the easy wins, and
yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Duncan. We'll share the slides so you and your colleagues can go through the presentation and dissect it. We will also send through the templates for the activities as well. So if there are specific areas you want to work on, you've got the templates to work from. Okie dokie. Well, I think if that's it, we'll bring everything to a close for today. Just to reiterate, there is a number of services available through the Humber Growth Hub, and if you're not already attuned to the services that are available, there are a number of products that are available and services that can help you and your business. Mentioned obviously the access to the grants and the investment side of things. There's the growth managers that can support with the one-to-one activity. There's mentoring sessions, and then there's some fabulous programs out there, including the supply chain, the digital catalyst, and one that I'm particularly fond of, and I know Duncan is as well, is the business scale-up program as well. So, no, thank you for attending, Steve. I think there's just one last slide to this deck. Just to give everyone a bit of an update, there are a couple more webinars with Steve. The next one is around mindset, and on the 24th, same time as today, and then finally on the 1st of October, the team that executes every time. So this is looking at the 4 disciplines of leadership, and building effective plans in place for your teams, but also putting it into an investment angle as well. We will be adding to the webinar program. We're just in the process of finalising that, and that will be on the Eventbrite page, which is provided there just in the coming days as well. So, again, thank you for coming along to today's session. Really hope you've enjoyed it. Please fill in the happy sheets, and hope to see you again next week.
Thanks, guys.